the night the earth held its breath. From the moment darkness fell, the very ground seemed to vibrate, for somewhere in the tall grass, a lion moved with purpose. And where one great cat stalks, another inevitably answers. That night, the savannah was suspended in anticipation, awaiting the culmination of a story years in the telling. A fractured alliance, a returning exile, and a pride teetering on the brink of collapse. This was the instant fate began to draw its circle tight around every lion who claimed this land. At the heart of this domain, two dominant prides, now known as the Ember Pride and the Stonecrest Pride, had carved the landscape with their legacies of victory and loss. Their histories were etched deep, a tapestry of quiet triumphs and faded scars, yet a new tempest was gathering. A male, once cast out, had stepped back into his ancestral lands, bearing the weight of years spent in exile. His mere presence altered the atmosphere, the migration of the herds, the very whisper of the wind, a sign that the delicate truce between order and chaos was about to shatter. This is the point where our saga truly begins. If you are captivated by tales of survival, the shifting tides of power, and the untamed beauty of the wild, be sure to subscribe and comment 1 to witness the next chapter, or comment 2 if you wish, for us to pause the narrative here. The Ember Pride's uncertain reign. As dawn broke, the Ember Pride drifted like specters over the plains, every lion moving with an assurance forged through generations of dominance. But just beneath this veneer of confidence, uncertainty festered. Their territory had been secure for ages, but now signs of an incursion snapped. Twigs, unfamiliar tracks, faraway echoes, suggested another lion was probing their frontiers. The lionesses felt at first, their instincts honing to a razor's edge, as they guided their cubs along safer routes. Even the pride's ascendant male, still growing into his leadership, could feel the tension coiling in the air. Miles to the west, the Stonecrest Pride observed these developments with a wary eye. They understood that when pressure mounts on one pride, its shockwaves eventually reach another. Their most senior lion, battle-scarred but undefeated, scanned the horizon with quiet calculation. Alliances were fragile. Old rivalries could be rekindled, and a single error in judgment could send their entire world into a tailspin. Between these two mighty prides, the savannah itself seemed to murmur. A reckoning was no longer coming, it was already here. The exile's return. For many seasons, the Stonecrest Pride had assumed the exiled male was lost to the wild forever. But the savannah seldom forgets a lion with a will of iron. When he emerged from the wilderness gaunter, but with a new composure, it was evident he hadn't merely survived, he had been transformed. Each footstep resonated with a purpose honed in solitude. The Ember Pride sensed his approach before they laid eyes on him. Rumors carried on the wind, unsettling even the most formidable lion among them. Mothers herded their young closer, their gazes fixed on the distant ridgelines as if expecting a phantom to materialize. Yet what truly sowed the seeds of fear was not his return alone. It was the quiet authority he now projected, a clear sign that he was no longer a solitary wanderer. The tracks of unknown paws followed his, hinting at a new partnership forged in the shadows. Two determined males, bound by ambition, possessed the power to upend an entire dynasty. The Stonecrest elders knew this truth, as did the youngest male just learning to defend his birthright. With the exile's shadow now falling across both territories, every sunrise felt like a challenge left unanswered. Tremors across the savannah. The first tangible evidence of a power shift arrived not as a roar, but as a profound silence. A disquieting stillness that forced every lion in the Ember Pride to freeze. Grazing herds abruptly altered their paths, birds took to the sky at the faintest vibration, and the wind itself seemed to carry cryptic warnings that none could decipher. Rangers observing from afar logged the strange behavior, but the prides felt it in their bones. The return of the exile was reshaping their world long before any physical confrontation had occurred. For the Stonecrest Pride, these tremors agitated old wounds. Their reigning male, a seasoned veteran, recognized the approach of a rival who had shed his fear of banishment. A resolute lion returning with renewed power could shatter years of hard-won stability in a single night. A current of tension surged through their lands as the younger males intensified their training, heeding the grave counsel of their elders. They were unaware that the outcast was already much closer than they imagined. Veiled by the tall grass, he surveyed the plains, reading the landscape like a map that would lead him back to the dominion that had once slipped from his grasp. Echoes of the coming storm. As twilight descended, the Ember Pride felt the tension settle upon their territory like an encroaching fog. Every lion moved with heightened vigilance, their ears swiveling toward distant sounds that hinted at something more than just wandering game. The elders convened in a solemn circle, sensing the exile's return was merely the prelude to a far greater upheaval. Their young leader, still forging his authority, stared at the horizon with a blend of apprehension and resolve, knowing one wrong move could invite catastrophe. Across the great valley, the Stonecrest Pride was gripped by a similar disquiet. Their veteran leader examined a fresh set of tracks, two distinct prints laid with bold and methodical purpose. Not only had the outcast returned stronger, but he had also found an ally, one with the audacity to challenge established borders. A coalition of ambitious males could destabilize the entire ecosystem, and every lion in Stonecrest understood the stakes. As the night deepened, a series of roars rolled across the plains, not as a threat but as a formal declaration. With each resonating call, every pride knew that a new era of power and survival was dawning for all who called this wild place home. The first test of nerve. The Ember Pride awoke to a disturbance. A far-off rumble, deep, persistent, and clear, announced that another lion had pushed further into their domain. It wasn't a direct confrontation, not yet, but a calculated probe of their defenses. The young leader advanced, his muscles coiled, aware that this single moment could seal his destiny. Behind him, the lionesses formed a living shield around the cubs, their gazes sharp, interpreting every rustle of the grass as a potential harbinger of danger. Across the plains, the outcast and his new partner stood on a high ridge, observing the territory with strategic patience. The exile had once fled this land, injured and alone. He now returned a lion remade, assessing which boundaries to test and which to shatter. His ally, younger but equally determined, mirrored his intense focus, both understanding that one decisive action could trigger a cascade of conflict. As the dawn streaked the sky with gold, the two males began their descent toward the river, Bend, a hallowed ground where countless sagas had either begun or met their end. On this day, the first steps of their insurrection were officially taken. The standoff at the river bend. At the river bend, the atmosphere was so charged that the very air seemed to stand still. The Ember Pride's young leader stepped into the open, every fiber of his being, screaming that a rival was closer than ever. From the opposite bank, the outcast observed him in silence, his new ally at his side, both gauging the pride's fortitude with the cold, hard intensity of lions shaped by adversity. The lionesses remained concealed in the reeds, poised to react at the first hint of aggression. They understood that a single false move could unleash a conflict for which none of them were prepared. Yet every lion held their position, knowing the resolution of this tense standoff would reverberate far beyond the water's edge. The silent calculation of strength. Night fell like a soft blanket over the plains, but no soul within the Ember Pride was at peace. The young leader could feel the outcast pressing forward once more, his presence a palpable weight against their boundary. Every member of the pride shifted with unease, interpreting the quiet as a sign that the scales of power were about to tip. Across the ridge, the exile tracked their every response with an unblinking gaze, a predator preparing for the moment when action becomes the only option. His ally waited by his side, composed and vigilant, knowing that a rising power must seize the perfect instant to forge its own destiny. When the waiting game ends, the rising sun cast a pale light that offered no solace. The Ember Pride assembled under a gnarled acacia tree, every lion attuned to the shifting currents of energy flowing across their land. The young leader felt the pressure reaching its peak. The exile was no longer just testing their borders, he was now claiming ground with methodical intent. Across the valley, the outcast crouched next to his ally, a lion poised to issue a challenge without a single roar, letting his actions speak with more force than any sound. The lionesses sensed the tightening knot of imminent change, their instincts screaming for caution even as their spirits cried out for defiance. Every lion on that plain knew the truth. The time for patience had expired, and the next move would determine the fate of them all. A new dawn ascends. Sunlight washed over the grasslands, bringing a tenuous peace felt by every lion. The Ember Pride stood vigilant as the veteran Stonecrest leader deciphered the fading tracks of the banished coalition, weighing the significance of their retreat. Hope stirred in even the youngest cubs, an instinctual knowledge that the future is forged by shifting allegiances. Your support allows us to chronicle every chapter in this evolving saga. For more tales of power and survival, subscribe and comment 1 to continue the journey, or 2 to pause the story.